You know what one of my greatest joys in life is? When I recommend somebody a book and they love it. It is my favourite thing ever. I've had friends come to me and be like, you have never recommended me a book that hasn't been incredible. Like, you have never steered me the wrong way. And there is nothing in my life that I'm more proud of than that. It just fills me with so much joy. And I also love getting my book recommendations from really rogue, obscure places. Like, there's nothing better than being recommended a book that you've never heard of before, and then you end up absolutely loving it. It's my favourite thing. And then I get to recommend that book to other people, and they're like, where did you hear about this? And I'm like, oh, I just know books so well. So anyway, the book that I actually get a lot of my book recommendations from is the LGBT Books forum on Reddit. I'm always scrolling on there. I've never posted in there before. But today, that's going to change. I'm going to put a post. I'm going to post something in the LGBT Books forum, and I'm going to ask Redditors for book recommendations, and then I'm going to choose some of them and read them and let you guys know what I think. Anyway, hi, I'm Georgia. I read a lot of gay books, and then I talk about those gay books on the internet, and if that sounds like something you might enjoy, then make sure you stick around, because that is what this entire channel is about. Subscribe. I'm not gonna lie, Reddit does scare me a little bit. I've only ever really perused the LGBT Books forum, and I've never posted in there before, and I actually had to create a new account just to post this, so let's see. I don't even know how this works. If you are looking for LGBT book recommendations, by the way, I really do recommend this forum, this subreddit, is that what they call it? I don't know the lingo. I find loads of good book recommendations in here. I just realised I need both hands to type. I'm going to put my microphone down here. But I don't love how the audio sounds when I actually attach my microphone as it should be to me, so sorry, I'm sure it's fine. Okay, what do I call it? Do I put the YouTube channel in the title? Do I say it's for a YouTube video? Recommend me queer books to talk about to review for a YouTube video? It's not very snappy, is it? Does it need to be snappy? Is that just very YouTuber content creator of me to be it needs to be slightly clickbait? I have a queer book channel on YouTube. Recommend me books for a video. Oh god. Why is this really stressing me out? Why do I feel very perceived? I don't like it. Okay, what I've got so far. Hi, I have a book channel on YouTube where I predominantly talk about queer books. I have a whole series where other people recommend me books to read, and for my latest episode I want to do Reddit recommends. So please let me know your favourite queer books. The more obscure, underrated, newly released the better. As you can probably imagine, I've read a lot. I do mostly read sapphic fiction and also love a queer memoir / non-fiction, but open to all. For reference, some books I've enjoyed recently are Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth, Ruby Fruit Jungle by Rita Mae Brown, and A Trans Man Walks into a Gay Bar by Harry Nicholas. And post. I'm doing it. I'm scared. Why am I scared? I've got to wait for moderator approval, but we'll see. Hopefully it'll post, and I'll come back at you in a week with what people recommend. So it's now been about 10 days since I posted on Reddit, and we are going to have a look together and see what books have been recommended. I am very, very curious. I had a look at the post in the first couple of days it went live just to make sure it was actually getting comments. And it has 41 comments, so technically there should be at least 41 books that have been recommended. Let's see. So the very first post, the post that has been upvoted the most, has 3 book recommendations. We have Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. We have Cleanness by Garth Greenwell. And To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. And then that's had 2 comments seconding Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl. I've heard a lot of things about this book. I haven't actually read it. So I think that is quite an obvious one to go for. It's the most upvotes. Lots of people saying to go for it. So our first book, I think we're going to maybe do 3 books in total. Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl is definitely going to be number 1, I think. Should we look up on Goodreads and see what people are saying about it? So the book description is this. It's 1993 and Paul Polydoris tends bar at the only gay club in a university town thrumming with politics and partying. He studies queer theory, has a dyke best friend, makes zines, and is a flaneur with a rich dating life. But Paul's also got a secret. He's a shapeshifter. That sounds so freaking good. I cannot wait to read that. See, my original plan was just to go for the books that have been most upvoted, but none of them have got super amounts of upvotes. The next one has 3, The one after that has 4, and a lot of them have like multiple comments on there. Oh my god, this comment. Somebody said, excuse me for being suspicious, but this is your first post ever on Reddit, and Georgia is not known to even have a Reddit account. So if you wanted book recommendations, why do you have to impersonate her? Just say you have similar taste to Georgia, unless you just wanted the attention, in which case I don't even know. So somebody clearly thought I was just like somebody pretending to be me. So I commented, I replied, and I was like, it's genuinely me, and it's genuinely a video I'm making. Here's the video as proof. It's me. I thought it was quite self-explanatory in the original post, but it's sweet that somebody's like trying to look out for me, I guess. I thought that was really funny. Somebody's recommended The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. I do really want to read that, but I feel like I'll read that anyway, even if it's not for this video. And In Memoriam as well, same thing. I want to read that. I feel like I'll read it regardless. I want to go for books I'll only read because of this, you know? My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson. Okay, that one sounds so interesting. A fierce and riveting queer coming-of-age story following the personal and political awakening of a young gay black man in 1980s New York City. Born into a wealthy black Indianapolis family, Earl Trey Singleton leaves his overbearing parents and their expectations behind by running away to New York City with only a few dollars in his pocket. That is what I'm looking for. That is what I want to read. Absolutely reading that one. Okay, so that's 2. We need to find one more that sparks my fancy. Heat and Light by Ellen Van Neerven. So they've written here, this is a group of short stories about queer Aboriginal characters by a non-binary Aboriginal author. I cannot recommend this enough wherever you are in the world, and the Goodreads description basically says the same. It hasn't got the best ratings. Maybe I'd enjoy it anyway, maybe. Oh, it doesn't even look like I can get hold of that here in the UK anyway. I can get the audiobook. Oh no, I could get it. I could get the book. Potential, another potential. How about Experienced by Kate Young? Bette is in love for the first time in her life. Finally, everything makes sense until it doesn't. As Bette approached 30, she realised something big. She's into women. And then she fell for May, who's entirely perfect, until out of the blue, May suggests they take a break. She wants Bette to have the opportunity she missed out on in her 20s, to explore the queer dating scene and then return certain about their future, her desires and herself. That sounds so interesting to me because me and my wife have had this same conversation so many times. She had lots of queer experience before we got together. I had minimal queer experience when we got together. Oh, speaking of my wife, she's calling me. Wait a sec. Hi, honey. Anyway, as I was saying, me and my wife had very similar conversations when we first got together. And this sounds like something that could be really, really specifically interesting for me to read. So I think this might be book number 3. So it looks like we have our 3 books. They are Experienced by Kate Young, My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, and Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler. I will be going back to the Reddit post as well in future when I want more book recommendations because there are some really good ones in there, but these 3, they're just speaking to my soul right now, you know? So I'm going to do it. I'm going to get my hands on these 3 books and I'll let you know what I think of them. I'll see you when I've read the first one, I guess. Reddit, you have let me down. I'm mad. I'm angry. I've wasted hours of my life trying to get through this genuinely terrible book. Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler is some of the most pretentious crap I've ever read in my entire life. And I was so excited to read this book. I was so excited. I thought I was going to love this. I thought it was going to be like quirky and queer and like one of those books that makes you think a little bit, but also it's like a fun reflection on life and on queerness. And no, it was just pretentious. It was rambly. It had no plot. The main character, Paul, sucks. I hated him. This book was not for me. And if it's for you, we're probably not going to be friends. Is that harsh? Maybe. I just hated this book. I genuinely thought I was going to love this book. Like, the cover is stunning. Like, look at that. That is gorgeous. The plot sounds intriguing. I really thought I was going to love this. And I spent 99% of this book just completely and utterly confused. You know when you finish a book and you just feel stupid? That is this in a nutshell. I felt like an actual idiot reading this book. And honestly, I feel like the author was very deliberate in that. I feel like the author wanted me to feel stupid, and I'm mad at them for it. But let me tell you about it anyway, because, you know, it might interest you, maybe. Paul Polydoros is our main character. It's 1993. He lives in Iowa City, and he is a shapeshifter in that he can shift between the genders at will. No, this is never explored in the book. You never find out why Paul can shapeshift in this way when nobody else can. That's it. Like, everyone else is just normal. Paul can switch between the genders at will. He doesn't really like tell anyone because he knows it's slightly weird, but also like it's not a point. Like, nobody's ever like, how, why, like, what's going on here? No, it's just accepted, which, you know, could be fine, but I'm the kind of person who wants to have the answers for everything. The fact that I didn't find that out in this book angered me. It made me angry. So yeah, Paul can shapeshift between the two genders, and I'm saying two genders there very, very deliberately, because for a book that's about the fluidity of gender, it is just so incredibly binary in a really strange way. I thought this book was very much going to explore gender and how it's like not one size fits all and how different people can explore gender in different ways. Oh no, not at all. You get none of that. There is male, there is female, and Paul is one or the other. When Paul is in his male form, he is mostly gay. When he's in his female form, he's mostly lesbian. It never describes him as bisexual, because obviously he's still like the same brain no matter what body he's in. But I think he feels such sort of strength in being queer that no matter what gender he is, he like wants to remain gay in that gender. Again, not really explored, not really said. Also, I am deliberately using the pronoun of he for Paul in this because that is the pronoun he uses, even in his female form, although sort of to other people when he's presenting as female, he introduces himself as Polly. In his internal narrative, he is still Paul, he is still a he. So like, I feel like I would have so many things to say about this book if I could like sit down with somebody and really dive into it and discuss it, but just trying to review it off the top of my head, all I can say is there are so many opportunities for this book that it was just completely missed. So when this book opens, Paul is in Iowa City, and then he goes to a lesbian festival with his lesbian best friend, who I think was called Jane, which is where he meets his girlfriend, Diane. Him and Diane do the lesbian thing, instantly fall for each other, instantly in love, obsessed. Paul does briefly go back to Iowa City and then decides to move to, I'm sure it is Maine, it's somewhere in that area of America, to live with Diane. And this is probably one of the most interesting parts of the book I found. I enjoyed seeing the reflections on lesbian culture, even though they weren't always good or nice. This is one of the aspects I think which did dig a little bit deeper into Paul/Polly and his psyche, because Diane never truly accepts Polly as a woman, even though Paul is fully living in his feminine form. Because that was essentially what Diane's problem was with Polly in this book. She never fully accepted him as a lesbian, as a woman, and it just didn't ever dive any deeper in that. And I was sort of like getting frustrated reading it, because I was like, I just need a little bit more, just a little bit more reflection that just never really came. Paul/Polly also never really feels lesbian enough in themselves to be accepted into the lesbian community in Maine, but again, like I said, the author just stopped short at fully exploring this. Just in general though, actually, I found all of the characterizations of lesbians in this book to be very stereotypical and cliche and shallow. It wasn't good. It was actually kind of offensive at points. Although maybe the characterization of lesbians in this book is a reflection on Paul himself and not the author, I don't really know. I could never quite figure out in this book like what was Paul's point of view and what was the author, and just like lazy writing. I'm not entirely sure. Paul himself is a very shallow, not very nice person. He hasn't really got much to him other than queerness, which again, I would love. Like, I love that kind of intense queerness in a character. But Paul just sucked. Like, Paul in this is kind of obsessed with everyone's queerness, with everyone's gender. And again, that would have been really interesting if it was explored any further. There's this quote on page 58. The minute he had a confirmation besides his own gaydar that a subject was homosexual, Paul compulsively searched for the flaws in that person's gender. Every gay had these flaws, Paul thought, although sometimes the flaw was being too perfect.
Paul noticed this most often in men. Most women weren't very good at being women. He'd learned when he really started to study them, like Jane with her mannish hands. If you didn't notice her hands or know anything about her, you'd see a pretty white girl in combat boots and a Lily Pulitzer golf skirt. Paul wondered why pretty girls were always doing stuff to look less pretty. He didn't get it at all. The prettier the girl, the more likely she was to dye her hair odd colours, to wear relentlessly out of style or ill-fitting clothes, to adopt unnecessary and overbearing eyeglasses. So like as soon as Paul meets anyone, he's instantly judging them against their gayness and about their gender expression, which once again, I will say is interesting. It's an interesting concept. It never goes any deeper than that. Paul never works to deconstruct this view, and so all you've got in this book is just a very shallow character who never learns anything. And when you're in that character's mind for the entirety of the book, it gets very draining. Very, very draining. The idea of shape-shifting, of true gender identity is so interesting in this book, but it's just never expanded upon. Like, it's all about how gender is physical, like the physical form of gender, rather than the deeper societal expectations and constructs of what gender really is. Sorry, I'm reading from my notes for this because I don't want to mess this up. Paul aggressively genders every single person that he meets. He judges them on their gender, on their appearance, how their gender appears to the world, like as you can tell from the excerpt I just read out. But he doesn't seem to learn any lessons at all from being a shapeshifter. He doesn't learn anything from being able to switch between the two genders. Again, it's just all very, very surface level, which again is fine if that's part of his character, but it makes for a really dull and frustrating book when he doesn't learn anything ever. He just refuses to grow in this book at all, and what it comes down to in the end for Paul is sex. Every single scenario in this book ends and begins with sex, like what somebody can offer him sexually. And that's it. This book is so wildly pretentious. There are names being dropped and obscure references being made. Literally every other paragraph that most people, as I said at the beginning of this review, are just never going to know or understand. Like, I had to stop Googling the references like a quarter of the way through this book, so I was like, I'm never going to finish this. If I'm having to stop every other paragraph to Google this obscure reference that's been made, we're never going to get done. So I gave up. Most of the time, the references weren't even interesting. Like 99% of the time, I was like, oh, I don't care about that. You feel like you're being spoken down to by the author. You feel like the author thinks that they are so much smarter than you, the reader, because they know all these really wild and obscure references, and you as the reader, you don't know anything. You're an idiot. This book meanders and it goes on tangents and just not in a fun way whatsoever, in just a really boring, dull way. This book is all vibes and no plot. None. No kind of character development. Nothing really happens. Paul starts this book completely insufferable and ends this book completely insufferable. Nothing is learned. You just follow him in like a couple of years of his life as he is a man for a bit, and then he's a woman for a bit, and then he's a man again. That's it. That is this book. Do not recommend. Don't read it. Boring. If you do like all vibes, no plot, then you might like this. But I did not. I hated it. So my first Reddit recommendation is a big fat from me. Thumbs down, hated it. But the second book I'm currently reading My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, I have a feeling that review is going to be very different because I am really enjoying it, as you will probably find out in about 2 seconds. Bye. Am I too booby in this top? Am I going to regret this? Maybe. Oh well. Enjoy. My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson. This is one of the easiest 5 stars I have ever given a book in my entire life. I loved this. This book is just my perfect intersection of fiction meets non-fiction. It's a fictional story told through the lens of real queer history, told through the lens of real queer people. I loved it. My Government Means to Kill Me follows Trey. He is 17 years old when the book starts. He is 19 when it finishes, and he is a young, gay, black man trying to make it on his own in New York City. You find out throughout the book how he sort of come to end up in New York. He actually came from a relatively privileged background. He grew up in Indiana, I think it was, with very successful, very career-driven parents. and he had this incredible education, but something happened when he was a young teen, or not even a teenager, I think he was 11, that kind of changed the trajectory of his life. And so he comes to New York City determined to make it on his own, away from his parents, away from the prying eyes and the gossip of everyone back in Indiana. And in doing so, he falls into queer politics in a way that's kind of to make amends for his past mistakes, the mistakes he made when he was 11. But also it's just unavoidable living in New York City as a black gay man in the 1980s. I didn't mention that this is set in the 1980s. It's the 1980s, it is the height of the AIDS epidemic, and Trey is on this journey of personal and political awakening. He becomes an activist, he becomes one of the founding members of ACT UP. And something I loved, something I adored about this book is that whilst Trey is a fictional character, you do forget that he's a fictional character, by the way. I spent probably the first quarter of this book very sure that Trey is some sort of political figure that I just hadn't heard of in real life. No, he is fictional. But Trey's fictional story is intertwined with the stories of so many real queer activist figures. But yeah, I genuinely spent the first quarter of this book thinking this was an actual memoir until I realised that Trey and Rashid Newson have different names, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Let me Google who Trey was, and it turns out he is fictional, but it says something about the writing that I was so convinced that he must have been real. This is written so phenomenally, and something I really, really loved about this story, some people hated this, and reading reviews of this, some people really didn't like this, but I really enjoyed it, is the footnotes. Every so often there's a person mentioned, something mentioned, a place in New York, some sort of tidbit of queer history, and Rashid Newson tells you about it as the reader. He includes footnotes on every other page. I don't know if it's going to focus, wait. So on this page, the Black Panther Party is mentioned, and then you got a footnote at the bottom telling you about it. And honestly, in talking about Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl for the last part of this video, that is kind of what Paul Takes the Form needed. There are so many obscure, strange references made in that book that I had no idea what was going on. And there are also so many references made in this book as well. I did have a better idea of this book because I know queer activism, I know queer history quite well, so I wasn't entirely clueless. But it was so handy on some of the pages to be like, oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, it's all good because there's a footnote and I can learn. And I love learning. I just feel like I learned so much in this book without having to be removed from the story. Like in Paul Takes the Form, when there was a reference I didn't understand, I had to put the book down, get my phone out, Google it, see if I cared. Most of the time I didn't. And then put it down again, then try to get back into the book, which was hard anyway because the book sucked. This one, no, I can just read the little footnote and then carry on with my reading experience. This one is about Larry Kramer. He was an activist, strategist, organiser, playwright, author and firebrand in service to the LGBTQ plus community for more than half a century. He is one of the main people who started ACT UP. And Larry Kramer is referenced, is spoken about in this book as a real character. Larry Kramer is a big character in the second half of this book. Trey wasn't, Larry Kramer was, but it's so genius how this book was written. Just the way that Rashid Newson was able to intertwine reality and fiction was flawless. This book is raw and real and true, and at some points it was a really difficult and very heavy read, but at no point did I want to put it down. I felt like I owed it to Trey as a character, to all the people who actually fought in this time in the 1980s for queer rights, for AIDS rights, that's probably not the right way of saying that, but for the government, for people to start caring about AIDS. I felt like I owed it to them to read this book and to learn and to absorb as much as I possibly could. I love the way that Trey was depicted as sort of falling into political activism by accident. He didn't move to New York to become an activist. He moved to New York to prove that he could make it on his own. He left his trust fund back home in Indiana. He left his family back in Indiana to prove to himself that he could do it without their help. And he struggled in New York. He lived in a studio apartment with another man called Gregory. He really fought. He took all of these odd jobs with minimum wage just to try and pay his rent, because as a visibly gay black man, he struggled to get work. He frequented a gay bathhouse in New York City called Mount Morris, which I'm pretty sure it did say that was a real place, where he meets a man called Bayard Rustin. And Rustin was, again, another real-life political figure, once again weaving this reality with fiction. And through chats with Rustin, Trey begins to learn about activism, about politics, and then he decides one day to take on his landlord because the place they're living is just not habitable. It's really, as you can imagine, in New York City, a very, very disgusting place with no upkeep, nobody's looking after it. And so Trey goes on a mission to try and sue his landlord so he doesn't have to pay his rent anymore. And the landlord, it turns out, is Fred Trump. Yes, Fred Trump, Donald Trump's real life father. He is a character in this book. And once he's for his landlord, he joins the fight against AIDS. He goes to volunteer with men who are dying, like actively dying from the disease. And in doing so, meets a woman called Angie. She is this butch lesbian character. She is very brash, very harsh, like she's not a very well-liked woman. And Angie runs what is essentially an AIDS hospital out of her home, mirroring the real-life stories of so many lesbian women in this time. In this time, gay men were going to hospitals and they were getting turned away. People didn't want to help the gay men because people thought it was a gay disease. They thought just by being around gay men, they would catch AIDS themselves. And in all honesty, there just wasn't much sympathy for them. And so lesbian women became the ones to take charge, to take over the care of their gay brothers who were dying of AIDS. And this is in a time when gay men and lesbian women really didn't have that much to do with each other. There was very much a boundary up between the two. Like, it wasn't the LGBT community as you might think of it now. Like, it was very much divided. Obviously, there is generalization. This is just a book review. But in that moment of need, lesbian women were the ones to take charge. They were the only ones to help. And Angie's story is the story of so many women during this time who took gay men into their homes and looked after them until their dying breaths. So that is what Trey helps Angie do. I don't think any of this constitutes as spoilers, by the way. These are just kind of the main plot points of the book. There is so much life, so much living Trey does between all of these things. This book is just so raw and so real, and it's so sexy at points. Like, it talks about Trey's search for a partner, for a boyfriend, for love. He goes to the gay bathhouse and he has all of these sexual encounters with men, but he's just looking for something more. He's looking for connection, but doesn't know how to find it. And also, he's young. He's 17, 18, 19. I feel like a lot of the time you can really see that through Trey. He's so mature in so many ways. He's so old beyond his years, but also in so many ways, he is just a teenage boy searching for connection. It's actually kind of wild looking at this book now and seeing that it's less than 300 pages long. I don't know how Rashid Newson was able to do it, but he just shoved so much life, so much queer history in like 290 something pages. Less than that. 276 pages. He just explores everything in this, like every facet of life. There's sex, relationships, friendships, the HIV/AIDS crisis, misogyny, queerness, privilege, racism, the intersection of being black and also having privilege within that community. You learn about Trey's life, but also the broader queer activism going on in this time. Stories of so many people are told in this book. The stories of so many people like Trey. The stories of so many queer activists, of ACT UP, how it came to be. You hear the stories of so many lesbians through the eyes of Angie. It's just, I adored this so much. And the fact that I don't think I've ever seen anyone else speak about this on the internet genuinely pains me. Like, why are more people not speaking about this? Maybe it's just a very me thing, like that perfect intersection of queer history and books, but please, 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 I beg you, read this book. I'm going to give Experienced by Kate Young a solid 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. I don't really know what the difference is between a 4 and 5 star for me. I feel like a 5 star is just a vibe. This wasn't giving me 5-star vibes, but I really, really liked it. This is a very well-paced, queer British rom-com, and honestly, as I was reading this, I could see the movie in my mind. For ages now, I've had on my ideas list, I want to film a video where I talk about all the books I think would do really well as movie adaptations, and this has gone straight up to the top of my list. I'm picturing a 90s rom-com, maybe like Notting Hill, Pretty Woman kind of vibes, but make it gay. Just so incredibly gay. This is the book for millennial lesbians, and as a millennial lesbian, a cusp, I must say, 1994, but a millennial nonetheless, this book spoke to my soul. This book is about Bet. She is 30 years old, and she only came out as a lesbian 18 months ago. So she is a very late, or not a very late in life lesbian, but a later in life lesbian. And she spent many, many years just dating men and never felt quite right. She could never figure out why none of her relationships ever really worked out, why she never felt that spark. And then she realised that's because she is a big old lesbian. And then about 5 months ago, she met a girl called May. 5 months, 3 months. A few months ago, she met a girl called May through her work and immediately fell in love. She was obsessed with her. They have a very happy relationship for 5 months, 3 months, however many months it was in the end. Bet is very, very happy. She's done the classic lesbian thing of just falling completely head over heels for her first love. And then May turns around one day and is like, we need to go on a break for 3 months because you've never slept with another woman before. I'm your first love. And I'm terrified that one day in a few years, you're going to turn around and be like, shit, I missed out. I need to go explore. And Bet doesn't want this. It's not what Bet wants at all. But May is very insistent that she goes out and has these experiences. Experienced, you see. And so they go on this break. And honestly, there's something about this book that just really spoke to my soul because I came out at 25 years old. I came out after meeting my wife. I knew I was gay for many, many years, but I was just terrified, living in fear, essentially. And when I finally came out, got with my wife, she was so scared of exactly the same thing. She said to me so many times, I'm scared that in a few years' time, you're going to regret this. You're going to wish that you'd lived the big lesbian experience. And we had lots of chats. We figured out how to make it work. And honestly, I completely now, at 30 years old, nearly 31 in like a week, painful, I understand where she was coming from. I get it. And so, although May in this book is kind of at points maybe made out to be the villain, I understand where May was coming from. She was thinking of Bet. She makes some terrible choices, don't get me wrong, but I get it. Like me and my wife or girlfriend at the time, I suppose she was, really had to sit down and have those conversations and talk about our fears and figure out how we were going to make it work. And we made it work. And here we are, 5 years on. We've been married for nearly a year now. And what follows from Bet is a very confusing, very hot, sometimes very not hot, other times, very messy foray into the lesbian dating world. It's queer dating apps and queer meetups and finding a queer tribe, finding your family. And honestly, that's kind of the main thing I took away from this book. Bet is a lesbian woman who is very deeply entrenched in the straight world. Her best friend, Ash, who she lives with, which, by the way, I love their relationship so much. It was one of the highlights of the book for me. Ash is a straight woman. All of her friends are straight. And so Bet doesn't really have any lesbians, any queer people in her life to bounce off of and to talk to about queer problems. And that's essentially what Bet ends up finding in her search. She finds her queer family, she finds her chosen family, and other things happen along the way that I'm not going to spoil for you. But yeah, as somebody who is also 30 years old and desperately in search of a queer family, of a queer group of friends, this honestly made me tear up on multiple different pages just from jealousy, just from wanting to live the life that Bet is living in this. She lives in Bristol. It's very British. The Britishness of this book really leaps off the pages. And one of the main problems I have is that I live in Reading, which is probably genuinely one of the straightest places in the UK. I'm pretty sure every queer person here turns 18 and then just immediately moves away. And honestly, I don't blame them, but it does mean we're very much lacking in a queer community. And so this is actually a call for help. This is a cry for help. If you are around your 30s, if you're queer, ideally lesbian woman, but queer in any form, and you want to be my friend, even if you live in London, central London, I can get there easily, it's fine. Let me know. I need queer friends immediately, please. Dear God, please get me away from all the straights. I feel like it's hard generally making friends in your late 20s, early 30s, but finding queer friends specifically, it's really, really hard. So yeah, I did find myself very intensely jealous of a fictional character throughout this book. Bet, as a character, I found her quite frustrating at points. She makes some choices that I probably wouldn't have made. She is so hung up on May, even when things really start to go south. She is just so insistent that May is the only person that she wants, so she sort of closes herself off to everyone else, and I just found that very frustrating at points. I found her a bit moany, a bit whiny, but also it's her story. She's allowed to moan. I think she just dealt with some of the situations in a very, very different way than I would have done in that same situation, which isn't a criticism of the book. I feel like it says something that a fictional character can make you feel so much as a reader, but I did find her quite annoying, frustrating at points. But honestly, the main draw of this book, the best part of this book, It's all the supporting characters. Ash, Bet's roommate. There's Ruth, who is the first person she goes on a date with and ends up finding her like chosen family through Ruth, all of Ruth's queer friends. I just really, really thought that every single character in this was so layered and so well written that they really felt like real people, and I love that in a book. I just thought this was a very smart, very well-rounded rom-com that honestly I'm kind of annoyed that I didn't think of writing myself, because this kind of does feel like my life experience. It's a very true reflection, I feel, of the lesbian experience, the pitfalls, the highs. I think if a straight friend was to come to me and be like, can you recommend me a book that is going to help me understand what it is to be queer, what it is to be a lesbian, I think I would actually recommend them this book very specifically. I adored that it wasn't only about romantic love, but also about platonic love too, about the importance of finding your tribe. I just really, really liked this, and the writing was so good. I thought it was really well paced. I read this in 3 evenings, which doesn't sound that impressive, but 2 of the evenings only had like an hour slot each to read. So essentially I read this entire book in like 4 hours, which says a lot, I think. So there you go. They are the 3 books. That is definitely a 2. The 3 books that Reddit recommended to me. And honestly, I feel like a 2 out of 3 success rate is pretty decent. I'm quite happy with that. Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl should be burnt in a fiery pit. I do not recommend this book. If you read this and you enjoyed it, I'd really like to hear about why in the comments down below. Like, I'd love to hear a different perspective, because I just didn't get it, didn't like it, not for me. But it might be for you, so I'd be intrigued to hear. But these two were so freaking good. Experience is going to get second place, my silver medal. I really, really, really enjoyed this. If you want something that's a bit more on the light side, that's a bit of an easy read, is also still going to stab you in the heart a million times, it was really cute. I really liked it. I just don't think anything can compete with My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson. I adored this so much. I do kind of feel like this is a book that maybe I personally am really going to love, and maybe other people in my comments might not agree with me, but this was just everything that I love in a book. It's fiction, it's non-fiction, it's queer history. I adored this so much, and I'm going to incessantly talk about it for probably the rest of the year, so get ready for that. Will I be going back to that Reddit thread for more recommendations? Absolutely. Why not? Let me know in the comments down below if you've got any recommendations of books that you think I'll enjoy based on the fact that I freaking love these ones. Please leave a comment down below. It's good for the algorithm, and more importantly, it's very good for my ego, so make sure you interact with this video in any way that you can. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys. Also subscribe. Please subscribe.